Richard Berthelsen joins me now, CTV News royal commentator. Richard, good to see you on a Monday.
You too.
What do you think here? I know you and I had a lot of conversations as to whether or not Harry and Meghan would be attending the coronation. Looks like that invitation, although by email, has gone out to them.
Yeah, no surprise, really. The palace has been making clear since the start of this discussion that all members of the family would be invited. I would think it'd be unlikely that he would have a role in the coronation, unlike his brother, Prince William, who is Prince of Wales, will probably have a role and represent the royal dukes, of which Harry is also one. So, again, not much of a surprise there. I think the palace is taking the high road here, and the ball is now firmly in the court of Harry and Meghan as to whether they will attend.
What do you think? Do you think they will attend, both of them? Maybe Harry will just attend. What are you sensing?
Well, those are all options,
Yeah.
that one of the two of them would attend or neither. Of course, I mean, I'm not always the best at predicting what they will do because they operate on a very different kind of approach to things than the rest of the royal family does. I mean, of the rest of the royal family, there's no question they'll all be there because it is an occasion of great significance, both religious and also to the governance of the state and also in the life of Charles as the king. So it's, probably one of the more important moments of his reign.
Hmm.
Whether or not they'll want to take kind of a back seat as they have at some of the other royal events, whether they'll want to engage with the family as they will have to do to some extent that weekend, we'll see. And let's remember, there is the coronation ceremony on the 6th, but there's also events on the 7th at Windsor Castle. There's also a National Day of Volunteering on the 8th. So the email probably went out explaining to all members of the royal family what their roles might be over the course of the entire weekend, because
Right.
it's not just the coronation ceremony itself.
And it's interesting because, as you heard me say earlier, this would be the first time, of course, since the book has come out that they would have seen each other. And even in the interviews and then that Netflix series and whatnot that they were part of, Harry expressed that he wanted to have his family, he wanted to have that relationship with his father and his brother. He wanted to have a happy family with Meghan and the children, but which would include members of the royal family. So what your sense here, if he does end up attending, certainly all eyes are going to be on the entire family, but it's important for it to be a private moment for them as well.
Yeah, there is some private moments off stage. I mean, again, it'll be a very busy weekend for the whole royal family, just like the period of the funeral was, just like the Platinum Jubilee was. These are not just, like there's a lot going on to get, everyone in place and on time. And so there's not a lot of time for socializing and whatever. And I think that any significant conversations with family members would not take place at that time.
Mm.
Harry and Meghan have an interest in maintaining the relationship with the royal family because it goes to their cachet in the world that they live in now. So if they're not part of these events, that link lessens over time. At the same time, I think they do find it stressful to be around members of the family. The family is not really terribly happy with what has
Mm.
gone on. I mean, let's be honest, who would be?
Yeah.
And so they will put on a face for the public, but it's not necessarily going to be a lot of warmth behind the scenes. And there's not a lot of time for
Right.
engagement around the scenes. And with Harry and Meghan needing to move out of Frogmore House, it may be their last occasion to visit that property, to stay there. Or they may be invited to stay at Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle where there's no shortage of space for them. So there's a lot of issues. I think they have to decide based on their public image and everything that's happening, whether it's to their advantage. And the royal family has invited them. They will be welcome to attend, but they will be very much
Mm.
witnessing the ceremony, not participating in it.
Richard, we will wait and see what the decision is. Richard Berthelsen, CTV News royal commentator. Thank you as always, Richard.